Hello and welcome to my channel The Fifth Volt. In this episode I want to give you a very quick look at the new module from Tangible Waves, the AE TBD. The TBD module is a digital computer that comes preloaded with 50 plugins, and they can be effects, complete synth voices, and some amazing sounds. Just now in the beginning you heard the Rings mode, which is a clone of the Mutable Instruments Rings that is loaded in here, and that Rings was going into the Cirrus module, which is also a clone for Mutable Instruments, cloning the Clouds module. So when we look at the module up front, we can see obviously that there's a big USB cable here at the top. This is connecting the module to your computer, where you can control all the parameters in real time via a web interface, which I will show you soon. On the inputs, you see here that there are three inputs that are summed together into the one input that goes to the selected plugin. You have the CV0, the CV in 1, the trigger in 0 and trigger in 1, and these can be freely assigned on the web interface to control whichever parameter of the currently selected plugin that you want. On the output side, you only have one mono output, but obviously you get three parallel outputs for that. Then you have an input gain control. You have an LED that flashes nicely. You have parameter 0 and parameter 1. Again, these two knobs can be freely assigned to parameters that you select. And you have two trigger buttons, 0 and 1. And again, these can also be freely assigned via the web interface. And then you also have a config button, and this lets you choose various different favorites that you can create using the web interface and select and use this module even when it's not connected to the computer. So there's not much to it. You have two knobs, two triggers, two CV inputs, two trigger inputs, but all of these can be freely assigned. And what that even means is something that we will have to look at on the web interface, which is very important to work with this module. Now just a word about the origin of this module. This is a clone of a UREC version called TBD, which uses the exact same firmware, but it had a few differences. So the UREC version has a Wi-Fi chip inside, and you can control all the parameters without a cable. From, for instance, just an iPad, for instance. But this is not possible in the AE Modular system because that it would have used way too much power, and then you couldn't work that using the normal voltage that is going through here. So the Wi-Fi has been removed, and you need to use the USB cable instead. Also, the original module and a lot of the plugins are stereo, but the AE Modular TBD is only mono. So what you can get out of this is a little bit reduced, especially if you look at some of the effects. There are very nice stereo reverbs, for instance, as the plugins, but you will only get a mono version of those. But I have to say, I listened to all of those, and it is really, really nice what you can do with it, even in mono. And for instance, something like the Rings, that is, I guess, worthwhile in itself, which you only need the mono output. So now let's have a look at how this looks like on the computer, how to start the software to connect to it, and how do you drive the various modes from the web interface. And I will also show you various examples of either oscillators or sound sources, and also some of the effects that are built into this plugin. So you can download the CTAG TBD firmware from our AE Modular GitHub repository. This is where you can find the newest firmware that you need to connect to your TBD. So just go to github.com/aemodular, click on the CTAG TBD repository here, and on the right hand side you can see those releases. So just click on the releases here, and the latest release is the WinTAPP GUI here, and if you click on assets, then you can see that you can download this zip file. Once you have downloaded the zip file and you've unzipped it, you just start the tapp.exe file, and this will open a window that gives you many options on how to connect to your TBD. So here you can see that this opened this UI here, and you can also see a terminal window in the background there. Just ignore that for now. And the main things you want to do here is either completely erase your TBD or flash a new firmware which comes with the zip file, or flash a new sample ROM which you can load from a file up here, but this is for a bit more advanced and I will cover that in another video much later. And the main thing here is to start the TAPP TBD here. And you can see that it already selects a serial port. And this is the serial port that has the CH3400 driver. And if I click on that, it will open my web browser and go straight into connecting with the TBD via the USB cable. And this shows me already the current plugin that is currently loaded and running. And if I go back to this application here, then you can see that switched. It now shows that I am using the TAPP.exe file as a web browser or web server in a way, and you can't do anything else. If I wanted to go in and do something else, like install a different firmware, I would have to close this and start it again. So now that I've loaded the plugin overview, I will put a link to the spreadsheet in the description below this video. When I look at one of these, I can quickly look it up on the right-hand side, what it actually is. So let's look at the first one, for instance, Antique. And we can see here that this is an effect, and it is a generator for audio artifacts known from record players and tapes. Now, if you want to know more about this, then you can follow the link right next to it, which will link to the proper documentation of this. So let's just go there and load this documentation, which is the CTAG TBD documentation, and it jumps directly to this plugin description. And this is an document that is updated by the plugin developers themselves, and here you can find more information. So once selecting this plugin here on the left-hand side, you can see that you can edit this channel, and this is where you provide the various parameters. So let's click on that. And now you can see that there are actually a lot of parameters that you can select and play with, and sometimes the selection is incredibly large, like in this, which is really just a crackle generator, but there are so many things that you can select here. For each parameter, or not for each, but some of the parameters you can assign to the CVIN or triggers or knobs, and you can select next to each parameter which knob to assign. So for instance, if I wanted to select the input level with one of the knobs or even one of the CVs, then I can select it from this drop down here. So here I would choose port 0, which is the leftmost port or knob, to control the input level for an incoming signal. So for instance, if I wanted to add some wow and flutter, then I would select maybe the knob number 1 to add more of that effect to the incoming signal. Everything else that I cannot assign to a knob, I can control directly from the web interface, and everything I do here is immediately transferred to the TBD module and changes the sound. And I will show you that very soon, how that works in real life. So what you can see here is that I have loaded the Crackle or the Antique plugin in channel 0 and the Moog filter in channel 1. So you can see that all the plugins that I can see here are only mono. So when I have a mono plugin in channel 0, then I can load another mono plugin in channel 1. But if I open a plugin which is stereo in channel 1 or channel 0, then there's not enough space to load another one. Another important thing on this is that we can store plugin properties into favorites. So here we see that there are 2 favorites, rings and bubbles. And at the moment I have Björklund selected, which is also the one that's selected currently on the TBD interface. And if I want to go back to rings, I just select the favorite here and click the recall button. And then I am back at the TBDings, which is the rings implementation on the TBD. If I wanted to do something completely different, like this polypad and the Moog filter, then I can store this as a new favorite by clicking the snap button. And then I can give it a name. And can store this here, and then I have another favorite that I can recall at any time. And you can also recall these using the config trigger, config button and the parameter 0 selector on the module itself. One other important aspect of this web interface is the configuration, and this is something that you will have to do from the start. And let's just quickly go into this. So here you can configure how the CV behaves. So on a UREC system, you would want this to be -5 to 5 potentially, but we are on AE Modular, so we want this from 0 to 5. Same with the potentiometer configurations. And this is an interesting one. Here we can daisy chain channel 0 to channel 1, which I've turned on. So on the original TBD, which is in UREC, you have a stereo output, so you can potentially route plugin 0 to the left channel and plugin 1 to the right channel. But we don't have that in the AE Modular world. Everything goes to the one mono output. So what you can do here is you can daisy chain plugin 0 to plugin 1. So I could load a mono oscillator and route this, for instance, to a mono effect. So first you switch this to on, and then you also have to select that the channel 0 should be mixed with channel 1, and that channel 1 should be mixed with channel 0, so that you get both outputs. Everything else in here is really irrelevant for the AE Modular version of the TBD because we do not have Wi-Fi, and the configuration here should already be in this manner when you receive your module. So let's have a look at some of those plugins and look at them first up and look at the effects plugins, because there are some really interesting delays and bit crushers and different things that we can just route a normal oscillator through. So here I have created a little patch that I will use to test a couple of the effects algorithms in the TBD. This is really a very simple patch. I'm taking the oscillator into the SV filter, that then goes into the VCA, which gets a snappy envelope. The envelope is triggered by an LFO, the bottom one here, so you can see that's the rhythm. And the LFO also triggers the sample and hold, which gets an noise input just to create random notes. The output goes into my 2@CV, so I can have some control over the range of notes. Then the notes go into the quantizer. The quantizer determines the pitch, and this is how I just get a simple random melody going. And this goes into the TBD input. And then on the TBD, I get the output into my mixer just to have a little bit of control of the output volume. And then it goes out into my recorder. So on the screen, you can see that I have here selected in plugin 0 a plate reverb. So this would be a stereo reverb, but we are only listening to it in mono. So let's hear what it sounds like without the reverb. And then when I just add a little bit of that reverb. So for that I click on Edit. And then the red parameter here is something that I will increase. And there you could see that all the parameters change in real time on the module. So as I'm controlling the sliders on the web interface, the sound, the message goes straight away to the TBD and gets, basically you can hear that without any delay at all. So now I use the sliders to control this delay, and what would be really cool is if I could do that with one of these two knobs. Although they are limited controls, you can assign them whichever way that you like, really. So for instance, what I think would be really cool would be to assign the red to port 0 and then the time to port 1. So this way we can control the way the reverb sounds and how much you can hear. So this, of course, was only one of the effects that we could use. If we go to the plugin overview here, then we can even sort by the effect or by the type. So if I would sort this here, I would get all the effects at the top here. And let's see what we have. There are so many effects. Let's choose maybe a chorus effect. So this would be e-chorus. And let's listen how that sounds like. I actually have no idea. So here I have a little patch where I am using the TB03 plugin, and I'm processing that directly on the TBD with a tape delay plugin that is being chained together. So in this case, I have a mono oscillator, a sound source in plugin 0, and that goes straight into the tape delay plugin and then goes out. On my AE Modular, I have patched it very simply. So here I have an LFO that drives my sequencer. The sequencer sends a gate output into this trigger input here on the TBD. Also sends a voltage output into my quantizer, and the quantizer goes into the CV input on the TBD. And the output goes straight into my mixer and from there into my recorder. So let's listen to how that sounds like with the delay off. And then let's just go and edit the delay to get a bit more interesting variations here. So now I want to map some of those controls to my TBD. So here I want to control the red output with the potentiometer 1, so that's the second one. And I want to change the delay time with the first one. So, and I'm giving the dry at half. So let's see what I can do with just mapping that to the controls. But of course, we can also control not the delay, but we can also control the parameters of the TB03. So let's click on Edit Channel here and see what we can change in here first with the mouse. And then maybe we map some of the controls to CV. So here I probably want to change the cutoff and or the resonance with a CV. So let me just quickly patch that. So I patch something into the CV in here, and then I patch that into my 2add CV down here, so I can control that with another knob right here. And let's see what I can do with that. So here I change the cutoff with a CV1, and let's listen to that. So as you can see, you have some variations in how you can control this with CV and those knobs. And you can also stream one oscillator, for instance, into an effect here. So here I have a patch that uses the TBD as an oscillator. So again, treating this like an oscillator, I have a pitch coming in. So the pitch is coming from my quantizer. That is driven by the sequencer 8 here. Again, the sequencer gets the clock from an LFO. And then the output of the TBD goes into a filter here, from the filter into a VCA, from the VCA into my mixer, and then out to my recorder. And the gate from the sequencer is driving here an envelope, and the envelope is opening and closing the VCA. So really just a normal basic patch, but in this case, the TBD is the oscillator. So looking here at the interface, I have the Mac OS C plugin installed. This is a clone of Mutable Instruments braids. So if we click on that, then we can hear first how that sounds like with the shape number 1. So the shape parameter here changes the type of the oscillator. So let's just listen to that. So you can hear that's a very basic kind of sine wave kind of sound. And then I just go through the shape a little bit and we will hear what all of that is. So as you can see down here, there are 2 parameters that change the behavior of each shape. And I have mapped those to the 2 potentiometers. And you can see that I have mapped the pitch to CV0, which is here or coming from my quantizer. So as you can hear, there are very many variations that you can just get just of this one plugin, and I haven't even gone through any of these parameters that you can apply, like wave shaping, FM and AM amount, and so on and so forth. So there is plenty to explore here. And this is only one of the many oscillators or tone generator plugins in the TBD. And I won't go into too much more detail because the video is already much too long. And I will leave that either to later videos or for yourself to explore. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and please explore the TBD. There are so many things there that you can do. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below or sign into the forum and ask them there. Thank you very much for watching, and keep on patching.